Hey up me duck, it's Links Live's Natters time, where your stories come alive. From the fens to the coast. So grab a cuppa and relax with your go-to podcast for unique Lincolnshire stories.
Welcome to the Links Live's Natters podcast, where we dive into the stories that matter. Today we're joined by Niamh Doherty, an autism and ADHD advocate who's making waves in the neurodiversity space. She creates resources, supports others through advocacy, and works to make workplaces and societies more inclusive. Welcome to the show, Niamh.
Thank you. I feel like you've really bigged me up there. I was like, oh.
Well, we're going to tell your story, how Niamh is making the world different, would we say? You're making things more inclusive for people.
No, yeah, I'd say different, raising awareness, and trying to just help people that maybe a bit lost like me understand everything a little bit more.
Well, let's take it back. Let's start at the beginning. Can you share a journey of being diagnosed with autism, ADHD? You know, what's your story? How did this happen?
Yeah, so I was actually diagnosed autistic as a child, which I feel like it's really rare now. I always hear late diagnosed stories, but it was my primary school teacher who spotted it. So I was diagnosed very, very young, but I wasn't made aware until a lot older. So I had no clue. I remember thinking that my special help in school was just because people liked me and not because it was for my autism. They sent me a Christmas card and I was like, oh, wow, this is really special. So it wasn't really until I moved to uni. I was in and out of mental health treatment all my life growing up for actually BPD. And then someone said to me, you didn't tell us you were autistic. And I said, like, oh, I didn't really know I was. At the time, I didn't really know what that meant. I kind of just thought, like, am I like Sheldon Cooper off Big Bang Theory kind of thing? I had no clue. And I was with a occupational therapist at the time who started looking into my autism and what that meant to me. And that's when I started really thinking, like, everything is connecting now. It's not actually mental health, it's sensory overload. And that led me down the path of my social prescriber who was helping me access autistic therapy, saying, I think you've got ADHD. And I thought, oh gosh, another thing, what's that mean now? Also didn't really know what ADHD was at the time. I knew about a lot of people having overlapping traits with autism from my own experience, but about a year and a half later, after him referring me on, I got diagnosed with ADHD. And then that led into also developing a few other chronic illnesses. So I think it wasn't until I was about 21, really up to 24, these past 3-4 years of actually understanding and saying, oh, okay, this is what it is. This is why things were different for me at school. This is why I couldn't deal with uni or work the way I could.
Do you think actually having that diagnosis sort of like, because it's a huge moment, isn't it? Do you think it's helped you overcome challenges actually having that diagnosis?
Definitely. I think there's pros and cons to diagnosis. I understand why some people who do have access to it don't, particularly. I know that especially when I was younger, there was a lot of stigma around what autism was, but without having that diagnosis, I'd have never have looked into reasonable adjustments that work, what actually work suits me. And I wouldn't have been so accepting about maybe my different sort of skills of socialising and making friends. So I think it was a massive self-acceptance, which it was a shock and it was hard, but without knowing, I wouldn't have been able to adapt my whole life and accommodate myself.
Did you think, I'm different? Did you actually think in your head, I feel different in the way I'm approaching things?
I kind of just thought that everyone mirrored other people's personalities at the time. I thought that everyone studied social interaction and went home and practiced it. I kind of just thought it was this unwritten thing that was going on and that no one talked about. It wasn't really until I actually looked into my autism and then I was like, oh, I am different, actually. This is why. It's not because everyone's just trying to do it.
Niamh. Yeah, unique.
And then I found out a lot of my quirky personality traits were probably mostly just my autism and ADHD traits. Yeah. But yeah, definitely. I think the feeling different came more when I knew what it was.
You studied at Leeds Beckett. I mean, how did you find that experience? You were saying you sort of winged it a bit, didn't you?
Yeah, I actually was planning on never really going to uni, and I delayed it and deferred for a year. 3 weeks before the deadline of not deferring, I rang up and said, "Can I come actually?" Which I think that lack of preparation probably just threw me in the deep end. But going to Leeds Beckett is where I accessed all my autism support. So uni was hard. I've never been great with school, college, or uni. My attendance has always been absolutely shocking. But that's also where I found out why it was hard and started making accommodations. So I had a mentor who was amazing, and Lottie, if you're listening, thank you. She delved into loads of things about autism to help me. We put in so many adjustments, and my lecturers were truly so accommodating. And it was my undergrad teacher, Hannah. She had a meeting with my master's teacher and said, Niamh's not going to come in. She works best from home. Lectures are overwhelming. And I really struggled with uni is full of a lot of different people, bright lights, lectures, which I don't learn in. I don't learn from sitting and listening. And you kind of have to hang out with people after lectures and in between things, which I really struggled with. I really just wanted to kind of say to people, can I go sit on my own? But at that time, I also wanted to be able to make friends. So it was trying to balance meeting needs that I weren't really aware of.
Can we ask, Niamh, would you like to say what year this was? You were at uni and stuff.
So I think it was 2019 was my first year in my undergrad, and I've just come back now after dropping out of a part-time 2-year master's. So 2019 to 2024 was my uni life. I did do a year out after because I just needed to calm down.
You say it was your teachers, your lecturers that really started to sort of notice this and stuff like that. How did you feel talking to them and stuff? Did you think, oh no,
they were my best friends?
They know.
I think because of how understanding they were, I felt so comfortable with them. My work was always great, so I didn't feel like I'm the difficult one. I definitely was difficult, but they were just, their flexibility with me. It was the first time ever that my struggles were kind of looked at and said, what can we do? Whereas I've been penalised at work for things like
Not
that.
being sort of like pushed in a corner and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, oh, well, this is how it used to be. It's sort of like, oh, you're stupid, go and sit in the corner. It's not like that anymore, is it?
Exactly.
People are addressing this.
Yeah, and I think they were really accepting of everyone actually learns differently. The thing I mostly struggled with is the unwritten rules with lectures. So they give out things like reading lists and extra homework you can do. I think you have to do every single one. And it was my teacher said, you just do things that you're going to write about. But I think it's that need that I don't feel like I've done enough unless everything's ticked off, which then doing that and going to lectures, which was just overwhelming me. It was nice to have someone that understood that. The only time I went in was to see my mentor, and then we changed that to video calls. So I think without that, I wouldn't have got through uni. It would have been another sort of high school and college experience, which I really struggled.
Basically, it was down to the lecturer, like, there's something I can't quite put my finger on, and she picked it up for you.
Yeah,
you said.
And then that was where I also started developing my chronic illnesses. So it was a scary time of being someone that could handle like doing a lot of sport to then really struggling with mobility, flare-ups, brain fog. That was a really hard time whilst unmasking my autism.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're grieving, aren't you? You're grieving for that life you've had, and you've got to build a new one.
Yeah, and I think health grief is something that so many people experience, whether it's late diagnosed or masking. I know I do it a lot with my old, not chronically ill self of the sport, I used to be able to socialise, have a part-time job and go to school, and now I go up the stairs and need to sit down.
or in the afternoon, I need a nap.
Yeah.
I need a nap in the afternoon. Well, moving you on a bit more, you obviously graduated from Leeds Beckett. I mean, can you tell us what you're doing? Because you're working for a company now, aren't you?
Yeah, so now I work for AIM Advonet in Leeds, just part-time. this was something that I never really experienced before. When I was graduating from uni, I worked at a retail store where I was going off sick constantly and being told off for going off sick. I was asking for adjustments and completely getting them denied.
Really?
Yeah, and I was giving them my diagnosis. I was with a neurologist and I got told that you need to stop going off sick, otherwise we can't keep you on anymore. I was saying that the till is overwhelming, can I do something else? And they'd say, but you're so good at socialising. But I would be going home and crying and not able to function. So I actually went to this company as a client for work support, ironically, and they helped me out and then said to me, why don't you apply for a job here? We think you'd be great. So
what a privilege, to say thank you very much. Was it something you'd even thought about doing?
Never. I think this was when I was still starting to uncover my autism. I just started my TikTok about autism, and that was kind of myself more than other people, of holding myself accountable to adjustments and processing what it meant to me. And then being offered this job, that's when I thought, this is actually where my passion is. I want to do what my then manager, who was the person helping me access work, do that for other people. But it was definitely, I didn't feel worthy of working there. And it was very funny going back, seeing people as a worker, no longer a client, which...
Yeah, because you're a peer support worker, aren't you? And you create resources for the community.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, when I first started, I was health access, so I helped people access the GP, working one-on-one with clients. And my manager said to me, we really want you to do some training and public speak. And at the time, my adjustments at uni were that I don't speak out in class. So I was thinking, this is not for me.
Did you find yourself ruminating in your head like, I can't do this, I can't do this?
I was like, I don't know enough to do this either. Like, when I first got my client even, I was like, am I good enough to actually help this person? So but
that's what makes you human.
Yeah.
Niamh. That's what makes you human, because, think, yes, I can do this, I can't do this. But when you actually get in the situation, you're like, I can do this.
As well, I wish I was my self-advocate to how I am with clients.
We're guilty of that, aren't we? We're all very good at helping other people, but when it comes to ourselves, we just let those things in our head ruminate in our head, don't we?
Massively.
We think, I can't do this. But then we're out there giving advice to people.
When I first had a client and they said, you've got to ring their GP to ask for adjustments, I was like, oh no. And literally, I'm now there like, so it's against the law by the Equality Act to not provide my client these. And I'm thinking, like, who is this woman? But if a GP talks to me like that, I'm like, it's okay, I'm sorry, like, it's fine.
Yeah. Also, it's sort of like between your job and your advocacy work, you're always on social media, aren't you? She's an avid TikToker. I've seen her.
Yeah, I think when I actually started work, some colleagues said to me, I've seen you on TikTok. And I was like, no, you haven't. That's not me. But I think my TikTok's what keeps my work going at the same time. I do a lot of resources now and training with work, and still have peer support groups and one-on-one clients, which is very much...
How do you balance all this?
I think a lot of it is, now this is very much do as I say, not as I do, because I try and do this, but it's actually planning in time like it's a work shift to recover. But balancing it for me, my social media is very similar to my job. Before I worked there, I created these resources for fun in my spare time anyway.
Well, that just shows you've got a real passion for it, Niamh.
Yeah, and I think when people said to me, work in what you love, I never really understood it until I did it. But my TikTok helps me because I get so many comments for people wanting to know about certain things or giving me feedback on how they experience the world as autistic. And I bring that into my work resources and say, loads of people want to know about this. Can we add this into this document? So I think it goes very hand in hand what I do. I think if I did TikTok about a complete different topic, it would be hard to balance. But I do put my work first. So some weeks I won't even post, but I do try and basically film a month ahead with TikTok to account for flare-ups, because I am someone that finds even messaging someone overwhelming. So it is very much about preparation and organisation, which as someone with ADHD as well is not as easy as that probably sounds.
What are people's misconceptions of the neurodiversity world, because there's all sorts of things.
So I think This is one of I could go on for ages about addressing misconceptions. The first one that I hear a lot, especially when I tell people I've got ADHD and autism, is that ADHD is the fun diagnosis. And I do want to preference it's not, it is debilitating. I think people hear ADHD and think, oh my gosh, you're going to be so social, impulsive and lively. And yes, for some people, they do have that traits of ADHD, but it comes with so many other debilitating things like sensory overload, this rejection sensitivity that can happen, and paralysis. I will cry if someone asks me what meal deal do you want, because I can't make decisions. And my other big one that I think I'm hearing a lot, and this is due to social media, is that everyone's autistic and ADHD now. It's trendy. Everyone wants to be it, and everyone's getting diagnosed.
You're in a situation, you don't want to be in that situation, isn't it?
No, it's not a fun thing to have. Yes, more people are getting diagnosed because new research has come out and more people are speaking. Whenever new research comes out, more people are going to find that research and say, oh, I fit in with that, let me go for a diagnostic test. And the more we've moved away a lot from stigma now. When you look at autism, it was originally diagnosed very much as a young white male child with learning disabilities. And I think a lot of people don't realise that we've now looked at how autism and different phenotypes present in women.
Yeah, because obviously sort of back in the 70s and the 80s, and not saying how old I am, it was almost like, this is me talking to you. You're almost put in that corner and say, you're very special, go away, just sit in the corner. But it has moved away from that.
That's a big thing. I've even heard people before, like, what's your special skill? And trust me, I wish I had the savant autism, but I cry if
Superman. I'm Superwoman on the quiet.
Honestly, I cry if I touch microfiber, so I wish I had the savant kind of thing. And I think so many people think that nothing's changed in the research area, people just want it now. It's not the case at all. The more and more we talk about things, the more and more people are going to understand and see traits in themselves, especially when you look at marginalised groups, queer groups, people of different ethnic minorities, women in age. Autism presents differently for everyone and in different groups. So it's really important that people kind of stop thinking that they're just jumping on a bandwagon to be cool, because that's not it. And trust me, autistic people have had years of an uphill battle of unmet needs and probably feeling like they don't fit in or know what's going on. They don't just wake up one day and think, I'm going to go for a diagnosis. It's not as easy as that. We've normally put in a lot of research and found that fits us.
We're talking long ways. I know in Lincolnshire, we're looking at 8-9 months. Before you even see somebody, to even start the process.
In some places, you can be waiting up to 5+ years for a diagnosis. I know we've got the right to choose now, where people are maybe go about a year or less, but access to a diagnosis, people can't always get it on the NHS, and it's about £2,000 plus to go private.
Yeah, I know, it's very expensive.
And there's so many reasons someone can't access it, and it's not easy. It's not something someone sees 1 or 2 TikToks and goes, oh, I fit in with that. Do you know what? I'm going to go for it. And I think that's something I hear a lot when I tell people about autism, is that everyone wants it now. But trust me, it is debilitating. And I think that getting that out there and making people understand.
You would say to people, think about it.
Yeah.
Just because it is out there and people do think it's trendy, but you really need to think about where you're going with this.
Yeah, and people that do have to self-diagnose, whether it's because they can't get a diagnosis or they're waiting. And if you are someone, by the way, self-diagnosis is completely valid. And I hear a lot about people hating on the self-diagnosis trend of that, but people, if you're waiting 5+ years and you know that you're fitting in with this thing, I think it's 80% of people that self-diagnose are later diagnosed, so it is pretty accurate and valid. And a lot of autistic people, if you're like me, you have researched that diagnosis a lot. You can probably spit out the DSM-5 criteria and tell us which ones you fit in with.
That's the
diagnostic criteria. And they probably have ticked off what traits they fall into. And a lot of people go through this will have trauma looking back, saying, this is where I had unmet needs, this is how my life could have been different. And it's not an easy road. And it's definitely not just a fun thing someone can throw into conversation and add in to their life.
Hey there, Lincolnshire business owners. Struggling to be found online? Still buried on page 3 of Google? Wondering if anyone's even looking? Well, stop stressing and join the Lincolnshire Business Directory. It's completely free to join, and you'll finally start getting noticed.
Think of it like shouting from the hilltops, but digitally. Want to really make a splash? For just £99, you can upgrade to a premium listing and get in front of more eyes. You'll be the talk of the town. It's super easy. Pick a plan, create your listing, and boom, you're live. Customers will be finding you faster than you can say SEO. Head to www.lincolnshirebusinessdirectory.co.uk. Don't miss out. Your customers are waiting.
At the Thrive Tribe, we believe everyone deserves the chance to soar. Whether you're an individual seeking self-improvement or a business aiming for success, we've got you covered. Personalised coaching. Unlock your potential with our expert coaches. One-on-one guidance tailored to your unique goals. Learn flexibly online. Boost your skills from Microsoft Office mastery to work-based expertise. Lifelong learning? We've got the keys. So whether you're an aspiring professional, a business leader, or simply hungry for growth, join the Thrive Tribe today. Visit thethrivetribe.com and let's ignite your journey. Remember, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving. The Thrive Tribe, where potential meets possibility.
So tell me a bit more about, because I wanted to sort of like, a lot of people talk about sort of diagnosis really, because a lot of people are quiet. People just think they're unsociable or they're really quiet, but they're not, are they? They're, you know, I know from sort of like experience, somebody who's very, very quiet and people just think they're arrogant.
It's something, and I think this is the thing as well. Every human is different, and everyone with the same diagnosis is going to be completely different. I am someone that in a group has often said, "Are you okay? You're not speaking," but one-on-one can come across really bubbly, and I think that's because a lot of my ADHD traits can sometimes mask my autistic traits, especially with socialising. But often, the people that I've spoke to who have been told they're quiet or arrogant or blunt, they're not. They're just direct, and I really envy that as someone that's a people pleaser who really struggles to be direct. I find people that communicate like that so much easier to talk to because there's no messing about of, "Oh, how was your weekend?" first. It's straight up like, can we discuss this? This is what I want to do. And a lot of them people have become my closest friends. And they're actually not quiet usually when you get to talk to them. It's just that they're quiet in that social situation because that's not where they're comfortable and their needs aren't being met.
That sounds like a real success story, doesn't it? You know, these people you're meeting and they're becoming your friends, aren't they? You know, and
I've definitely made friends for life through social media and TikTok, and it gives me so much more motivation to do what I do when I get all of these messages saying, "I've just binge watched all your content. Thank you so much. I feel so heard. I've used this resource that you've posted to finally get adjustment."
So people are sort of like benefiting from your sort of resources, and even just by talking to them and putting your spin on the world, really.
Yeah, and I still can't believe that's something I'm doing, that I'm capable of actually helping people with that. And it is amazing to see the messages. And I think for me, that keeps me going a lot. But when I first did it, I thought even if this just helps one person, that's going to be amazing. And the amount of messages I've had, so you will always get negative things, I think, no matter what you do. And there's always going to be people that are like, "Oh, you're just autistic, can't you just deal with it?" All sorts of different things like that. But I think no matter what you do in life, you're going to get that. And it's about sort of not blocking them out, because sometimes I do use them comments as an educational tool for people to say, "I get why you think this is a common stigma, this is maybe how you can look at it from a different angle," but it's using the positive ones and thinking actually all of these people are benefiting. Don't let that one person kind of get to you too much.
Because you've participated in sort of like some conferences as well, and one of them was in West Yorkshire, the Neurodiversity Summit, wasn't it? Collaborating with the NHS and charities. What was that like? How did that feel being up on, were you up on stage doing this?
Oh my gosh, not at that point. I think I'd only been working at Advocate for about 2 months and I just put my name forward to go and do it.
Do you think that was impulse?
Well, I was just submerged into this world of other autistic people and I'd not been in that before. So it was this thing of like, let me do everything. I want to experience as much as I can and I want to learn as much as I can. So I was there for a few months. It was me and the manager's manager and I thought, oh my gosh, what have I got myself into? Practicing like conversation starters before I went. But it was It was overwhelming, but it was amazing.
But that's how you deal with it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's how you prepare to go into a situation, and for you, that's every day.
Yeah, and to be fair, the summit was. They knew they had a lot of professionals there, but also people with lived experience, which I think was great to hear from. Okay, so we're looking at how we want to help West Yorkshire be more neuro-inclusive and bridge the gap of wait list times and support for people that aren't diagnosed yet and help people when they are diagnosed. So you're hearing professional side of how that is difficult, where the funding is going to come from, what we're going to do. But you're also hearing some really emotional lived experiences from people that have been in healthcare, maybe been mistreated.
How do you protect yourself from that? You know, do you think, wow, this is amazing, but then I've got to think about myself with what I'm hearing?
It really fueled a lot of passion for me, for pushing change, but also as someone that was there as a professional with their own lived experience. I think the people that spoke that were most captivating were the ones with lived experience. And at this point, I knew the healthcare sort of issues, like when you look at mental health, about 80% of healthcare professionals say they want more training in what autism is and identifying it. And people on wards for autistic people, it's an average 5.5 years compared to 90 days for non-autistic people. And that's due to unmet needs, and getting to meet some of these people that have been through that and listen to them and listen to why this change is needed. It was just, I think, an all-round amazing, captivating but overwhelming experience.
Yeah, because a lot of people are so heavily judged, aren't they? And when you get sort of, I hate to say this word, when people are sort of drilled into it, it's coming out that there is unmet needs, isn't there? You know, there's reasons behind and stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's the same with anyone. When I've spoken to healthcare professionals, especially when I talk about something called neurotypical privilege, I think people get their back up when you say this is where...
Explain that one to our listeners.
So neurotypical privilege is, and privilege is not anyone's fault before I say this. I think people hear this word and get their back up. Privilege is just, there's things like white privilege, pretty privilege, neurotypical privilege, and it's basically just being in a world that's set up to favour the majority and not the minority. So some of the things on this checklist of if you've got it includes: when I know someone wants a healthy baby, I know they want one with my neurotype. I know that the education system is set up for the way that I learn. I know I'm not going to be penalised for absences due to my disability. Things like that. And it's going through that and talking to people. And I think a lot of the professionals will get a backup when you say this is where something's wrong. But it's about listening to what's wrong and accepting that it exists and saying, okay, what can we do to maybe move forward from that rather than deny it?
So tell me, what does the future hold for you? What are you up to? Because I know she's been beavering away. She's been tapping away on that computer, and that brain's been going, I have ideas.
Yeah, so in work, in my actual paid for job, everything's sort of up and coming at the minute, especially with a new year. We're going to be doing a lot more peer support groups, and I'm really wanting to try and hopefully push a bit more training. We're doing videos for Healthy Minds, but in my self-advocacy work, especially in Lincolnshire, I'm really, really wanting to sort of bridge that gap from awareness of these diagnoses and disabilities and push more to understanding, talking about how to make your venues accessible. And I'd love to be able to train workplace managers and organisations about not just adjustments in work.
Can people contact you to?
Yes, so I do have a link tree with my WhatsApp and everything in it, but
we can give all that to listeners at the end, you know. But I just want you to know that people can contact you.
Yes,
if they want her invaluable advice.
Because at the moment, I write resources and training for fun in the hopes of one day to get a website set up where people can... I want it to be free for those like me who need that access, but I want to have some kind of charged consultation and resources for professionals and staff. But I want it to be more known that adjustments aren't just people being difficult, and this is how you can change your even hiring practice to be inclusive, and when you have people there, and how you can make events and spaces inclusive. I think I was looking at some stats the other day, actually. It was like 52% of autistic people reported live events like sport, comedy, theatre to be inaccessible even from the booking situation. Some places you have to even call just to do it. Other places aren't clear about what their accessible seating and tickets are. So there's so many different aspects, and you get there and there's not really a quiet space. Things aren't properly signed. And I think accessibility for those people that don't have either experience because they need it themselves or know someone can unintentionally come across as an afterthought for people. They'll think, have I done the bare minimum of, I've got a ramp there, maybe a hearing induction loop, but they're not looking at everything as a whole of, what information are you putting information and schedule out there? Have you got a picture of the building? Have you got signs in braille and large font and non-auditory announcements, as well as
are you going to stick me at the end of the aisle, which is normally my go-to, because I have to look around the venue and things like that to know that if anything happens, I can get out.
Yeah, and it's so many, people have so many different needs, and it's not just autism and ADHD. People have mobility needs, chronic illnesses, anxiety, and it's about sort of trying to teach these organisations and managers and healthcare professionals how you can be accommodating for that. And you're not always going to meet everyone's. That's why we can try and have one-on-one adjustments. But it's about having maybe a best practice inclusivity that you can try and do. So that's sort of that goal.
Making sure everybody knows that practice.
Yeah.
Right down from your sales assistants who are selling tickets right up to the CEOs, because 9 times out of 10, these policies are made by these managers, but they're not
feeding it down. And I think that's the big thing. Even at events, staff aren't trained for how to handle someone that's maybe stimming or having a meltdown, and people can then have restraint used and be kicked out for maybe coming across as difficult or challenging. Or sometimes, I think I've had a comment before where someone's thought I was intoxicated because I was struggling, I was rocking, I didn't have my walking stick and I was in pain and I was stimming, and that then got negative repercussions because they...
Can you explain that term for people?
So stimming is a form of regulating your surroundings, emotions and processing. Different sort of ones can be finger tapping, rocking, swaying. It can be scrunching your face. There's verbal stims as well, echolalia. Hair pulling's another one. Head banging can be used a lot. There's so many different forms. Everyone actually stims. If you've ever fiddled with your hair when you're working before, that's a stim. If you've ever done a leg tap whilst you focus, that's a stim. Yeah, I have a colleague that said they play with their beard as a stim as well. So
I haven't got a beard.
But no, I think people hear stimming and they think it's just everyone does it. It's just the extent to what autistic people do it.
Some people are aware, they're doing it and stuff like that, and other people just do these natural things, don't they? And you just sort of like...
I recorded myself doing some training the other day and I didn't think I was stimming, and I looked back and I was actually tapping my fingers the whole way and rocking back and forth. But I had to see the video and I was like, I thought I did really well, not just stim then. And I watched, I was like, I've not stopped moving the whole time.
Yeah, because it's all these little things, that people need to know, isn't it?
And it's ways of communicating as well. I think I've had people before that have been shouted at when they struggle to communicate verbally, and some people struggle to communicate verbally all the time, and others it's sort of as and when. Mine's usually even in shutdowns or high anxiety, but if you're then penalised and shouted at for that, that's going to make it worse, and people don't understand that maybe some days you can talk and other days you need text to speech.
Yeah, obviously after having a TIA, I do struggle with my speech and stuff, so I know where you're coming from, because like yourself, some days we can talk for England, and some days we just can't get those words out, but you are judged. And I have to say to people that start phone calls, I'm really sorry if I sound like I've had about 15 pints. It's because I'm struggling, and I try and make a joke of it. But sometimes people just don't get it.
I think we are in a massive world where we're judged on what we see and what we hear, which is why that privilege again comes in. People that maybe are portraying slightly different to how people think they should be portraying can then get penalised and suffer more as a result of that. Stimming, different communication needs. I know people that use AAC nearly all of the time, and then that's sort of like augmentative communication. So things like text-to-speech or picture boards, and people then stop talking to them or talk to the person they're with instead of them. Like they're not less, but like they haven't got time for that communication. And at the end of the day, they want to actually talk. It just takes a bit longer to actually type it and then click play. And I think, it definitely...
So what would you like to see? What have you actually been working on that you'd like to see?
I think a big one is people not rolling their eyes when people are asked for adjustments. The phrase is, everyone's a bit autistic, or, you can't tell, well done. things like that to not be a common response anymore, to be understood, and that when someone asks for these adjustments, it's because they're actually going to work better when they ask for them, and the work output will most likely increase because they're not masking the disability anymore. But as well as that, it's just, I think, seeing how much more late diagnosed people now, we've got more information going up, it's trying to get them and other people around them to understand their own needs and know that it's okay to have a bit of trial and error, and it's okay to advocate for your own needs, especially in healthcare, work and education. I think they're the big three places that my big passionate kind of feelings around.
Yeah. I mean, how can people contact you? You know, can people contact you? Because I know she has this dream. Let's make this dream happen for her. You know, let's get some businesses. You know, let's get people involved for you.
So I think I can leave definitely my email, which is nellydoc, NELLYDOC@outlook.com, and that'll be probably my main source of contact.
Yeah, let's make this lady's dream come true of sort of self-employment and stuff like that, so she can go out and sort of make life better for everybody. Niamh, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I'd like to invite you back on in a few months' time to see if anybody's made her dream come true, and we will catch up with you to see what you're up to. But Niamh, thank you very much for talking on the Links Lives Natters podcast.
Thank you for having me as well.
You're welcome. That's all for this episode of the Links Lives Natters podcast. A huge thank you to Niamh for joining me today, and of course to my brilliant technical wizards for keeping everything running smoothly. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, share and let us know your thoughts. You can find us on all social media platforms. Until next time, keep nattering.